Okay, good evening. So today we'll be discussing maybe a relevant topic. You're allowed to learn Torah on Nittel Nacht.
Oh,
Which
that was a question.
that's a,
I thought you were asking everyone the question.
that's a question.
Which is tonight.
And that's the topic of the show. That's the show. Yeah, that's the show. So Eva said, no, I said, we have to learn together and see the sources of it. Can you learn Torah on Nittel Nacht? So what is Nittel Nacht? We'll get, if we have time afterwards, we'll get more to the name of it. Why did it have Nittel Nacht? What's the name of a Nittel Nacht? But it's the evening of Christmas, Xmas. Yeah, that's the Nittel Nacht. When is Nittel Nacht? Is it on the 24th, between the 24th and the 25th of December? Or is it on January 5th and 6th? Why would it be January 5th and 6th?
Depends which Christians you're.
But with Christians, you have about 500 years ago, they changed I think it used to be called the Julius or the Julian calendar to Georgian calendar we have today. They added 10 days because they said through the years, the year of the sun, the solar year, and the calendar weren't exact, so it was missing 10 days, so they added 10 days, and then they also changed a bit the calendar, adding a day in February every few years. So that's the idea of the calendar we have today, and therefore the birth date of the guy was moved from, it used to be the 25th of December, but it actually should be the 5th of January. That's why we have different Christians celebrating the holiday in different dates, because some kept to the date and some transferred together with moving the calendar. So that's about the Nittel Nacht. And the question is are you allowed to learn Torah on Nittel Nacht? Since there is a custom of not learning Torah, and we'll try and go a bit into the custom, where it comes from, and what do we do here in Israel today? What should we be doing? And we'll maybe begin with the simple answer. Christianity exists for about 2,000 years, more or less. 2,000 years. The Mishnah was written 1,800 years ago. The Gemara was written 1,400 years ago. So the sages of the Mishnah and the sages of the Gemara, they knew what Christianity is. The Geonim, the Rishonim, some of them lived under the Byzantium, I think it's called, Empire. Some of them lived under Christians. We get to the Rishonim, the ones from Europe lived under Christian kingdoms. And we don't find anything, not in the Gemara, not in the Mishnah, not in the Gemara, and not in the Rishonim, about the problem of learning Torah on this night. So we have a rule in halacha: if we don't find something which is quite often, a Nittel Nacht happens to happen every year, we get to the state, right? And it's not mentioned in the Rishonim, a problem of learning Torah, some of a custom of women maybe not going to the mikveh. So if we don't see anything about it, obviously there is no problem. Okay? And many times we can learn not just from what is said, but also from what is not said. Okay? What's not said. And if there's nothing to be said about Nittel Nacht, obviously there's no problem about it. But still, we see the customs, and one of the rabbis who wrote the customs, this custom is my great-great-great-grandfather, Rabbi Yonatan Eibishitz. We see the customs mainly probably in Eastern Europe, in Hungary and other places, mainly by Hasidim, who didn't learn Torah on that night. And it brings the question, why didn't they learn Torah? And what do we do? Can we learn Torah today? Okay, so that's the topic for today about the Nittel Nacht. Let's start maybe from the earliest sources we have from the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah. Okay, the first Mishnah in Avodah Zarah says that 3 days before the religious holidays of non-Jews, you can't have anything to do with interaction with them, with selling them things and buying from them things. And the reason is that they will praise the God for if they did a big business. So before the religious holiday, and they managed to do a good thing of business, so they'll praise the idols for that, and therefore we can't do any business with them 3 days.
They thank their gods.
Because they'll thank the gods, and because it's close to the holiday, they're already connected to the holiday. We have one of the days called calendar. Okay, calendar. It reminds us the word calendar. Okay, calendar, which is 8 days after the Tkufa of Tevet. It's when the day is the shortest day, probably around the day is the shortest day. So that's around now. Chazal even say that there was an ancient holiday even from the times of Adam HaRishon. He sees the day getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and he starts to be scared. Maybe the world will come to an end. Armageddon, right? The world will come to an end. And then he sees that the day starts to become longer and longer, and he says, okay, that's the normal routine of the world. And he made a holiday of 8 days, and that's became like a very ancient tradition of having a holiday of 8 days around this time of the year. It's interesting that Hanukkah became also a holiday of 8 days around the same time. So anyway, we see this idea in Chazal about not having any interaction with them close to the day of called calendar, whatever it is. It's around this time of the year, but nothing mentioned about learning Torah. We do have other questions which were brought to Rishonim. What do we do on that day for the holiday of the non-Jewish Christians? What do we do on the holiday? Can we buy things from them? Can we buy things from them? Can we sell? Can someone send them presents? It was a custom even today, custom to important people to send their presents to them. And if you have a good friend who maybe perhaps a priest, can you send him a present because it's to keep the good relationship between Jews and non-Jews. So we have the question here about this holiday and other holidays, and some of the Rishonim. The Rashbam was the grandchild of Rashi, and he writes in the name of his grandfather, in the name of Rashi, that for the Christians, the main holiday is now. It's what they call calendar or Nittel. He also calls it Nittel. That's the main holiday. And for that, we can't send them gifts around it. But the rest of the holidays, they don't see it as so important holidays, or so important connected to the religion. Okay, so we can see already the idea of the Nittel Day, questions about it already from Rashi. Rashi lived almost 900 years ago, more than 800 years ago. So that's a very ancient source, and Rashi was one of the earlier Rishonim in Europe, because the times of the Geonim, the era of the Geonim, is in Bavel, and then from there they spread out to Europe, including Spain, including North Africa, and then the time of the Rishonim started. So, but Rashi is one of the earlier Rishonim in Europe, in France. So this idea, and Rashi, or Rashbam, the grandchild of Rashi, uses the word Nittel here, and that's maybe one of the earliest sources we have about Nittel. Anyway, Rashi doesn't mention anything about not learning Torah. We do have interesting customs about what people used to do on that night. One of the customs which is brought, we say Aleinu Shabeach, right? Say Aleinu Shabeach, and one of the sentences we say there, Shehem mishtachavim lehevel varik. They bow down for nothing. They bow down for nothing. I want to mention the exact source of it, where it is. Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac from Tirna. Okay, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac from Tirna. Okay, he lived, let's see how many years ago, the 14th century. Like he passed away more or less 1425. So we're talking about more or less 600 years ago in a place called Tirna. So he mentions, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac from Tirna, he mentions a custom that they had. When you say Aleinu Shabeach, and you mention the words Shehem Mishtachavim Lahevel Varik, they bow down for nothing. So the people used to say it loud. Okay, on this night, people used to say it loud. Although during all of the year they didn't say it loud because they were probably scared of the neighbor Christians. But on that night, they said it loud. Why weren't they scared of the neighbor Christians? Good question. Perhaps they felt, even if you're scared, if you're afraid, sometimes you have to mention something. Everyone else they have the lights outside and the bells outside and whatever they have. The Jewish people, especially when they felt that they're always captured by the Christians, they felt they needed to have one day of the year they raise their head. So also here, you didn't have any, it doesn't mention anything about not learning Torah, just about different customs we have. In later years, we do find the minhag of not learning Torah. And it's interesting to see probably how called maybe evolution of customs, evolution of minhagim. Okay, so why don't we learn Torah? What happens, or what is a Jew afraid of when he goes out to the street and he has a neighbor who might be drunk? After he drunk a lot, what might he be afraid of? He'll be hurt. Or even if the neighbor, I saw today like a post from a Christian person, please tell people, please, I hope that people driving on the streets tonight act as if they drove once a car. That's it. So I guess people drink and they behave in a way where not always they would behave through the whole year. So Nittel Night became, the holiday of the Christians around the Jews, became a dangerous reason. Another dangerous reason was that people were now maybe into the enthusiastic about the religion. And part of the religion of the Christianity maybe changed a bit in the last few years, but part of it, at least in the original, was that they need to step on Jews, and the Jews need to be bowed down for Christians, Christianity, because they didn't follow their religion. So that's a dangerous day when people are so much into the religion. Now they might hurt those Jewish people that they killed, perhaps killed. I'm not sure if historically it's correct or not, but according to the stories, the Jewish people killed Yeshu. So that might be another dangerous reason. Another reason that might bring danger, as we see today for Christians, today it's a holiday of light. They have all the lights and the tree and lamps. And if you go to shul and learn, so you have to have your lights turned on in shul, right? If the non-Jewish people, neighbors say, hey, how do they dare have a light in the shul in our holiday? They might now start a pogrom and the problems. So it's dangerous to go outside to the street. So many practical reasons cause that it will be dangerous to go to outside of the streets on that night. So it means it's easier and much safer to stay at home. That's why perhaps also the mikveh many times were closed on that night. And if a woman needs to toivel, she'll toivel the next day, because it's dangerous for a woman to go outside and for a man to go outside on that day. So these are very, very practical reasons why people didn't learn Torah on the Nittel Night. These reasons obviously were applied only in Ashkenaz, only in Europe, and the Sephardim did not have those customs. And obviously, Sephardim continued learning Torah for the whole year, and they didn't have any problems. They continued learning Torah, so the custom became only a custom of some of the Ashkenazi Jewish people.
No one bring up Bitul Torah that you're wasting your time by not learning.
So you can't always learn. It's dangerous to learn. Okay. It's dangerous to learn. And perhaps here we have an interesting thing. Many times when something forces us to do something, so especially more the Hasidic movement, And the Hasidic movement wanted to give, inspire people and give reasons for what they're doing. So we have a few, I'll say, more Hasidic reasons, spiritual reasons for not learning Torah on this night. Okay, so we have more spiritual reasons for not learning Torah on this night. But it seems like probably the reason started from more of a practical reason. Okay, practical, it's dangerous to go outside because they're drunk, because any other reasons, it's dangerous to go outside. And then we have more of the spiritual reasons why not to learn Torah on that night. Okay, so that's why I said that's an interesting thing where there's an evolution of a minhag. It starts from a necessity, and then it becomes like a lechatchila. There's a reason for not learning Torah. One of the reasons brought is because of avelut. We are mourning on that day. It's a sad day for Judaism because of that day. For years, for hundreds or maybe thousands of years, we were chased by the Christians. Hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed in pogroms, and if you take the Holocaust as maybe the peak, so we get to a few million, 6 million of Jews killed. But we have also beforehand the Cossacks and the Crusades, and every time the Jews were chased by the neighbors, and because of this night, so it is an aspect of avelut, of mourning on this night. This reason isn't maybe a great reason. The Khatam Sofer, a very, very known posek in Hungary, and he says in the name of his rabbi, Rav Nathan Adler, or I heard from the name of my rabbi that don't learn Torah, and it says it's a minhag of shtut. It's a nonsense of a minhag. So, and he says you should people who do it, say them stop. You aren't supposed to do it. People need to learn Torah. And also, if a woman needs to go to the mikveh and Torah and immerse in the mikveh, she should go to the mikveh. Okay, and there's no real reason for not learning Torah on that night. So the Khatam Sofer also there's no problem. Also, the Khatam Sofer, he says, I don't understand. People in those days, the custom was not to learn Torah until midnight, and then from midnight to learn Torah. Since when do we find in Judaism the difference between the first half of the night and the second half of the night? We find it sometimes in the Korbanot, Tumat Hadeshen, and other things, but we don't see it in the holiness or meaning of a day. For example, Shabbat starts from sunset. Pesach starts from sunset. We have nothing which starts from the midnight. And the only if something happens in the midnight is just to distance us from the day. Like we try to say Shema until midnight, okay, before midnight. But if someone forgot, they can continue until the rest of the night. So the Khatam Sofer said, I don't understand the difference between the first half of the night, the second half of the night, and there's no issue with it. And he says there is no problem, and you can learn. There's no problem. Okay, that is one reason. Another reason was, and that's also a typical Ashkenazi minhag, typical Ashkenazi reason. The Ashkenazim have more minhagim of trying to refrain or distance the way we look like from the Christians around us. Okay, that's because probably there was more influence and more Jews, especially the Christians, tried to make us Christian, to Christianize us. And there was a need to show the difference between us and the Christians. For example, Sfaradim, where does the Sfaradi Chazan, where does he stand? Sfaradi Chazan? In the Bima, where they read the Torah, in the Teva. Where does the Ashkenazi Chazan stand? In the front, not in the Bima, not in the high elevated place in the shul. Why is that? It makes sense. It's the center of the shul. It's higher. Why doesn't he stand there? The Chazan, not to be like the Christians. Okay, so we have quite a few examples of Ashkenazim saying we can't be like them. We need to make sure to keep our Jewish identity. And one of the things they had, they used to come, probably in some places, wake up early at night, or wake up around midnight, and go to the churches to pray. So to distance ourselves from them, To show when we are different, we say, okay, we do the exact opposite in order to keep the Jewish identity. To keep the Jewish identity, they refrain from learning Torah, not to be like the Jewish people who used to go to churches at nighttime. There's another reason brought, and from all the reasons, I think that is the hardest reason to understand and to explain. And that is that night we need to focus our mind and the connection to Hashem, that He will erase and nullify the powers of Tumah, the powers of Tumah. So that these are, and for that night, so we can't.
Is there Tumah on that night?
It's more Tumah because that's when the Christianity was born. Okay, so there's more Tumah on that night. So if we learn Torah, so you can't focus your mind on connecting to Hashem. So and not everyone should not learn Torah, and instead of that, have his mind focused in connection to Hashem. That I'll say is more of a Hasidic explanation, because from the Litvish point of view, how do you connect to Hashem? Learn Torah. Okay, learn Torah. That's the way to connect to Hashem. So that is the more of a Hasidic explanation of this Torah, and there's the emotional and the thought and the mind connected to Hashem. So it's hard to, as a Litvish mind, it's hard for us to accept it. And also it's hard to accept it because what did they do in that night? In many places, they didn't now focus the mind on Hashem. They used to play chess or play cards. So you can't say, okay, I'm now focusing the mind on Hashem, playing chess or cards. So that is it's a hard explanation. Many other reasons brought. Okay, many other reasons brought. I'll bring maybe one more reason, and that's it. You can look at it since that's the day where Christianity rose. So we have to show our Jewish identity. That's the day we have to show we are Jewish. If people wouldn't, if some people would learn Torah, saying we are now, we're showing our Jewish identity, our Jewish connection, and some people would not learn Torah, it's like as if someone doesn't go on Yom Kippur to shul. He says, no, I'm fine. On Yom Kippur, I do not need to go to shul. His showing is not part of the nation, of the Jewish nation. So if that should be a night that everyone's supposed to learn Torah, and then a few people do not learn Torah, so they might show they aren't part of the Jewish identity, Jewish nation. Therefore, they decided, okay, no one learns Torah. So that's okay. It's a reason. As I said, it seems like that it's an evolution of a minhag. It started from very, very practical reasons. It was just dangerous to go to shul, and afterwards to give more of a good feeling or meaning for why we can't learn Torah. So we have also the other reasons, which I brought some of them and didn't bring the rest of the reasons, but probably the reason came after the custom was established. What about learning Torah in Israel, in Eretz Israel? Okay, so obviously, as Sephardim, as we mentioned, didn't have the problem at all. They didn't have the question at all. And they learned Torah. Okay, the Sephardim didn't live around the Christians. So they just learned Torah through all the year. And that's it. Okay, so there's no problem.
Actually, there's no issue of sakana.
So there's no issue of sakana. So in Israel, there's no issue of sakana, especially that in the early, when Ashkenazim started coming to Israel, so all of a sudden Ashkenazim found themselves around Muslims. They're used to being around Christians. All of a sudden they're around Muslims. And they also try to become a bit like the Sephardim around them. One of the Ashkenazi Hasidic Yerushalmi kapota, which is white with stripes on it, came from trying to be like the Jalabia, like a Sephardi Jalabia. So it had happened a few changes, but it's Ashkenazi coming with Ashkenazi culture and becoming a bit more absorbing from the Sephardi culture in Israel. They were around the Muslims, so they didn't have any problem learning Torah. And now we have to give us a reason. How can you learn Torah from the Hasidic point of view in Israel? And the Hasidic gave, again, a spiritual reason that in Israel, that is beyond all the powers of Tumah. And even if there's no Jews in Israel, there's like as if a virtual fence protecting Israel from the bad spirits, the bad forces of Tumah, from coming into Israel. We see in many other sources that Israel is holier than the rest of the places. So if we see in many sources that Israel is holier than the rest of the places. So also for the idea of learning Torah, if you can't learn Torah out of Israel because of the effect of the Christians, and maybe this Torah will help the power of Christianity or whatever it is. So in Israel, we don't have the problem. Israel is elevated. So in Israel, they learned Torah. Lemaise, okay, we come to even people out of Israel. And I think, as we started from the beginning, we said this minhag of not learning Torah does not appear in none of the Rishonim, doesn't appear in the Gemara, doesn't appear in the Mishnah, and even if it was because they were scared of Christians and they erased a few words here and there because of the Christians. So for hundreds of years, we have the Gemara and Rishonim and Geonim, and no one mentioned the custom, so obviously we can learn Torah. And also I think there's an important day, at least today, we don't learn Torah day and night, unfortunately. If we would learn day and night Torah, say, okay, fine, so one night I'm not learning Torah, I'm resting a bit, maybe that's fine. But we don't learn Torah every day and night. And we believe in the power of Torah, the ability of Torah to give us the identity, the connection to Hashem. We have a saying of Chazal, Divrei Torah lo mekablim tum'ah. Words of Torah don't get any tum'ah, they can't get infected by any other forces and energies. So Divrei Torah are always pure. So on that night, especially on that night, like any other night, we should be focusing and connecting to Hashem. And how do we connect to Hashem? Learning Torah and saying they have their own religion, they have their own words, and we have the words of Torah. And by showing the Jewish identity, showing the Jewish connection, showing how it's important to be Jewish, we learn Torah for the merit of people who learn Torah, for the merit of people who do not learn Torah. And Baruch Hashem, today we don't have the danger of learning Torah around Christians. So if we don't have the danger, we can go back to the original halacha and the original minhag, that's learning Torah day and night. That's Hem Chayenu V'Orech Yameinu. It's a good time to mention, if you learn Derech Nefesh HaChaim. Nefesh HaChaim, the student of the Gra, Rabbi Chaim Mivolozhin, the fourth sha'ar, the fourth gate, fourth part of the book. He has so many words and so many chapters and paragraphs about the power of Torah, and that by learning Torah, we're now connecting to Hashem. It's as if Nishmat Hashem, Kuchabrichu, as if he gave himself in the Torah. So by learning Torah, that's our best way to connect to Hashem, to be part of the infinite, divine presence, and from that to strengthen our Jewish identity by learning Torah whenever we can.
Thank you.